Welcome to Amplifying Leadership. Our topic here is leadership, and our guests bring their knowledge, skills, challenges, and wins to help us all be better leaders. My name is Tara Lehman, and I am a partner, coach, and consultant at Twin Life Coaching and Business Services. For our leadership clients, we aim to provide effective leadership information through this podcast, community, coaching, and more. You can see all of our leadership offerings and information at www.amplifyingleadership.ca. Today, I am joined by Michael Allison, an executive business consultant, personal growth coach, career professional development expert, as well as a Purple Heart combat veteran. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Terry, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Awesome. So why don't we get started with learning a little bit more about you and how you came to leadership?
Absolutely. I born in Jamaica, raised in Miami, Florida, and came through growing up with some humble beginnings. But I did join the military, and I served in the Marine Corps, and that's where my leadership, I would say, actually propelled and got started. And once serving in the military, I learned a lot about working with troops and how to lead young men, and then galvanizing and putting together a team and learning all of the important skills when it comes to leadership, when it comes to the vision, adaptability, your communication, all of these different types of skills. And then my transition from the service, I worked in the corporate world. So I worked for Norfolk Southern Railroad. Then I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs as a project manager and a contractor. And then I became the director for Military and Veterans Affairs for the Florida Atlantic University. And once I finished working in the corporate world, I decided to step into the entrepreneur space, and I started running a franchise. I bought a franchise construction company. Awesome. And we managed that company. We made the Inc. 5000. And then I sold that company. And then I started the Adversity Academy, as you just introduced, of what we do for the company, just trying to help people within this world that's facing adversity within life or business as well.
That's awesome. Before we get too much into our conversation, I have to say you touched on a word I love to hear when it comes to leadership, which is vision. I think Every leader needs to have a vision. Every company needs to have a vision, because if you don't have a vision, how can you actually grow the team, right?
Most definitely. I think vision is probably the number one and key aspect if you want to lead people. They can't follow or go anywhere if you don't have a vision that they can follow and believe in as well, too.
That's a key point, right? The believe in piece and making sure they understand the vision. I mean, How many companies have you seen where there's a vision, it's on paper, and not a single person knows what it is?
That's right. Yeah. I think there's more to than just having the vision statement and the mission statement. It's actually, do you live and breathe it within it itself? Do we practice those things and actually put those things into action?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on that one. So going back to your leadership story now, and thank you for that little sidebar. I think it was an important one to touch on. When you were coming into leadership, what was that biggest obstacle that you found for yourself? Something you had to overcome, maybe?
I think the biggest aspect of leadership that was the obstacle for me, I want to say, was the transition for me coming out of the service. I got out of the service in 2007, and I was used to things being quite regimented, quite scheduled. And quite honestly, when being in a leadership position and you're working with troops, there's not that many, I would say, talking back. Everyone does what you say, that sort of thing when it comes to that particular type of leadership. So pretty much things were going to go in order, per se. When I transitioned out of the service and I got into working in the corporate space, my leadership style had to change, and it taught me a lot more about some of the things that I did learn in the military, but just how to apply it differently. So it came down to being adaptable, being flexible, understanding emotional intelligence when it comes to working with different people from different ilks now. So now, before I was working with guys that were in their teens or their young 20s, and now being in the corporate space, working on a railroad, working for the university, or working for the government, I'm working with people that are in their 50s, in their 60s. Some people that's been in the company for over 20 years, longer than me, but now I'm their supervisor. So it took a lot of emotional intelligence when it comes to some of those things when it came with that transition. And trying to like change people's ideas, trying to change people's thought, trying to be innovative when it comes to bringing in your thoughts and your skills and some things that you could help with improving. It took a lot of things around communications too as well, because
Mhm.
learning how to talk in the military is a different way than talking to people in the corporate.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Absolutely.
So those are some of the biggest obstacles that I faced, but overall, obviously, I did overcome those adversities that I did face within the corporate space with that transition, I would say.
So let me ask you a question about the transition, because clearly two totally different spaces to be a
Yes.
leader in. So when you went from military to corporate, what kind of growth did you find that you had to do? That something maybe that you knew you didn't have, but you had to grow into it in order to be able to switch that leadership style over?
I would say when it comes to growth, I think personal development was one of the biggest acumen that I had to work on. So I
Hmm.
had to work on some of the things that were very intrinsic that I didn't really plug into or dig into in some of those things. So when it comes to the communication, the emotional intelligence piece of
Yeah.
things, the being much more decisive when it comes to making decisions, right? And then I think I've always had been a person of high character and integrity, but I noticed within the corporate space, there's a lot more of I want to say politics. You want to say is it when you come to the corporate
Yeah.
space, to be quite honest, and
Hmm.
learning some of those things of how to communicate, how to navigate the system, how to understand things, and how to do things, and understanding when whoever it is within different hierarchies of business or people that you work with or the organizational structure, some of those things when it comes to communication was the biggest piece for me that I had to work on. So just navigating that in regards to
Hmm.
understanding how to speak to people, communicate with people, get buy-in from people, delivering that the aspects of like teamwork, where you get people to buy in from a different aspect because like I said, in the military, people did what you say, and there was
Hmm.
no repercussion or rebuttal to what you were saying. But now the buying piece had to be different when you communicate and develop in teamwork just to get a goal or get a mission accomplished.
Well, since you're already talking about my favorite topic, which is communication, let's delve into that a little bit more. So when I mean, obviously you were leading the military, and like you said, they do what you tell them to do. And now you're leading a team where all of a sudden you have diversity in age, for example, as you mentioned, and it's a completely different communication style. What do you think for you was the biggest differences? I mean, besides the obviously like tell and do is what the one side is, to what do I tell these people and how do I communicate with them? What are your thoughts around that and the communication piece?
Most definitely. I think active listening played a big part
Yeah.
for me in regards to understanding what people were saying and what they were trying to communicate for me too as well. I believe one of the greatest asset that I have is transparency. So
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to share information with people that needed that information so they could take that information and learn how to apply that as well too. For myself, I've been in many different situations and I kind of wish I would have been heard. So the other thing that helped out was empathy because it showed a good bit of compassion, knowing that you've been in someone's space before and you've been and you understood what they've been through. The
Mm-hmm.
other part to this I would say is whenever you're working with people, you're empowering them, you're inspiring them, you're motivating them to get something accomplished. So the biggest keys to that is making sure you're heard, making sure that you're valued, making sure
Mm-hmm.
that there's some buy-in and there's some collaborativeness, which keeps people motivated.
Yeah, all of those things are awesome. And like collaboration, even with leaders, not just listening, but actually active listening. And like you said, let them being heard and even taking what they said seriously. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's so many times when, you don't know everything that they do, and they may have the absolute perfect idea that you never thought of, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So let me talk a little bit with you about the diverse group that you had, obviously different ages, as you mentioned. And of course, some people who are older versus younger, they communicate so differently these days. How did you manage teams that had that bit of diversity when it comes to just the age groups that were in the team?
One of the biggest things that I did when I transitioned, I showed a great bit of humility. and
Okay.
I was not perfect. I did not know the industry, and I had to learn the industry. So for me to gain buy-in and for people to work with me, I had to show that high level of humility and learning from people that was already in the space. And to doing so, it was, I would say it was breathtaking for me and eye-opening for me, but it was so much rewarding. And I say that when
Mm-hmm.
I transitioned to the railroad, I was working with guys that were 50s, 60s in the union. And union operations are different, as
Very
in
different.
they're very different. So what I had to do was ride the trains with the guys. I had to ride the trains with the guy, get to know more about them, a little bit about their family, not too personal, but a good bit about that family,
Mm-hmm.
building that rapport with them. And then whenever we were having events, I invited them to the events and get their thoughts and get their opinions and ask them what do they want to see on the railroad and those types of things. And once I started doing all of the things that they wanted me to do and inviting them to things like that, the overtime reduced, the injuries reduced. We also became one of the top leading railroad section that we had that increased all of the performance for our vendors and so much more.
Oh, wow.
Led to me getting promoted. Led to me put together a track proposal to increase the track speed, where we reduced the efficiency for some of the fuel that was being burned and used up. From there, I transitioned from there, and I went to work in the government with government contractors and so forth. So now we're working with your IBMs, your Oracles, your PWS
Yeah.
companies. So now you work with different entities, different people from different segments, different groups. So now it's younger and older, different types of people. But from that experience, I learned how to now work with people from different groups, different vendors, different
Mm-hmm.
agencies and things like that, which made things a whole lot much more seamless. Then I went to Florida Atlantic University, and now I was working with students.
All over the place.
But this was really, really cool experience because the younger generation looked to us or looked to me for wisdom. And it was so much gained knowledge that I've had and experience where talking to them, they were very intuitive to listening to what I was saying. And I love that part, being now I'm in a mentor kind of space or a coaching type of space and a consultation type of space
Mm-hmm.
where you're helping students navigate some of the trenches that you've been through, especially when
Right.
it comes to like using like your veterans benefits, your GI Bill benefits, and just navigating things on campus. And then I had to work with our board of trustee members when I had to deliver on projects and programs and things like that. So it was very diverse, but tons of knowledge and tons of experience gained from that.
And you certainly work with very diverse work groups, that is for sure, with different leadership styles, and of course having to adapt to those based on who you're talking to. Did you find that one group of, type of industry, so the university, the corporate, or even the military, was easier when it came to leadership, or were they all have their own little challenges and wins?
You know what? They all had their own challenges, but the good thing about it, I would reiterate that humility plays a big part. So
Yeah.
when you go into something from the space of learning and understanding, you look at it from a different perspective, and you cognitively think about it. How am I going to be a part of this and help this situation or help these circumstances to be better?
Mm-hmm.
And once people know that you're coming from a place of helping and wanting to improve, and you're not there to belittle, chastise, or create any type of anxiety within the environment,
Mm-hmm.
then people are much more collaborative. And that's something that I was able to foster and gain. So when I was in the military, I had guys older than me, younger than me. Now, granted, I know I mentioned that for the most part, people do what you're asking them to do,
Mm-hmm.
but still that comes with a level of them understanding you, getting to know you, and
Yeah.
trusting you. Trust is one of the biggest things that you can have when you're in the service. And for me to get guys, when we were in the midst of it, we're in Iraq, we're going through battle, and
Mm-hmm.
guys are moving and acting and reacting based off what you're telling them. It's an absolute another level of leadership for me when you're under high stress situations.
Yes. Yeah, I bet.
And then, obviously, working on the railroad, I worked with guys that were much more older than me, and I had to gain their buy-in. I had to do all of the hard work, all of the legwork to do those things, and it led to a transformation of what we were that particular territory of the world that I was working in. So through and all, all of them were very different, but very
Hmm.
rewarding at it as well.
Yeah. So I want to come back to a word you mentioned a few times now, which is trust. And you gave the example earlier with the railroad and, going with them on the trains or, working beside them to, help understand and be able to communicate better and build that team. Let's talk a little bit about that because, for me, I think that's exceptional that leaders get out there and do the work with their employees. When I worked in a warehouse, I was leading the warehouse. And if somebody was needing help out back, I was out there shipping or whatever I could do as a leader. So I find that very intriguing that you also do that. And I think it's awesome. What are your thoughts on how leaders can try to get a little bit more involved because some are so stressed or burnt out? But that involvement, I found, and I'm sure you found, built that trust so heavily that was so important to the team and efficiencies. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I think a lot of times us as leaders sometimes can probably either get in over our head or we put a lot on our plate and we really don't delegate. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the keys to when you're a leader, either training people to delegate, because we have to learn how to relinquish certain types of powers that we do have as leaders as well.
Hmm.
But once you're able to do some of those things and for people to gain some trust in you, you have to put some skin in the game a little bit too as well.
Yeah.
Because you cannot sit up there and act like a know-it-all, because that's how they will talk about you behind your back and be very reluctant to do something for you if they know that they cannot trust you.
Hmm.
So when people that are following you and depending upon you, if you could show a bit of empathy, you could show a bit of skin in the game, or you're sitting there side by side with them, or you're getting to learn them, or it's sort of kind of a give and take sort of situation, relationship
Hmm.
too as well. What are you giving to them of value where they see the value within that? And then they're willing to actually put in the work for you too as well. People wants to be rewarded. People wants to be compensated. People want to be heard.
Yeah.
People wants to feel that they're contributing to a greater cause.
Yeah, I agree. And I love all of that. And that us leaders, I mean, we aren't know-it-alls, right? We literally don't know it all. And there's some leaders out there that need to remove that thought from their head and realize that the team is who the specialists are. We're there to lead them, empower them, influence them, right? We're not there to be that specialist. And I think those are key things that you're saying. Let me ask you this. If I was a new leader going from one, type of leadership like you did to a new type of leadership or even industry changes like you've gone through, are there any tips that you can give us so that we can start to lead effectively?
I believe to lead effectively as a new leader, you asked me, I think this was one of the first questions you asked me, and it was around embracing continuous learning. So personal
Hmm.
development.
Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
think you have, as a leader, you have to be on that continuous path or continuous journey of always learning. If you stop there, then you become stagnant. And one of the biggest things that I live by in life, and the military actually instilled this in me, was that complacency kills. And if you remain
Yeah.
complacent, if you remain in the same place, you will never grow and you cannot lead people, because the people that you're leading will outlead you. They will pass
Yeah.
you if you don't continue to learn. So that's the biggest thing. Start investing in yourself and developing these skills, whether it's through things you do personally or whether it's things that you go to your company or within your organization or joining different groups that's continually to push you and challenge you for you to become a better leader. The
Hmm.
next
For
thing I'm going to
mentoring and
say,
coaching.
absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. The next thing that I'm going to say is building strong relationships. So building those strong relationships is you have to be within the right community. So the right coaching group, the right consultation that's leading you and helping you, the right partners that's challenging you. For me, I love having accountability partners. They keep me accountable within the
Yeah.
things that I'm doing, right? Then the last part I'm going to talk about is this. As a new leader, I said this earlier, is you have to step into situations with humility. You have to be in a place of learning, always learning, where once you learn enough, then you could be able to take charge. Then you could be able to take leads, and then you could be able to delegate and start telling people what to do. Because I think a lot of times if most people ever think about whenever they get interviewed for a job, they usually ask you, what are you going to do within the first 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days or something like that. There's a reason why they ask you that question, because they're trying to see if you're going to come into a space where you're going to just come in and take charge, or if you're going to come in and learn, or you could come and help, or you could come in and improve.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a book out there, and I apologize, I don't know the name or the author, but it talks about the 30, 60, and 90 days of leadership at a new job. So if anybody knows what that is, then I know it's out there somewhere. I've had a couple of people who've told me about it. So certainly that personal development, professional development is the way that leaders have to go. And I think that's the way they should lead their teams, encouraging their teams for the same things. I absolutely agree with you. Let me ask you this. What would be that key takeaway that you feel we should take from our conversation today?
I believe the key takeaway from this conversation, as leaders, we got to embrace challenges. Whenever challenges or adversity face you, which is I'm all about overcoming adversity, you have to be one to step into that. It actually shows you and develops your character and shows what you're really made of. And truly, when you're facing challenges, some people think that when they face challenge, they have to do it all by themselves. You actually don't. There's tons of people that will be willing to do and go through something with you. You just have to ask for that help. The second thing I would say is adapting. Being a leader, you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to understand the circumstances and the situation that you're facing, and knowing how to make very, very quick decisions. I always talk about 3Ds: decision, direction, and destination. You have to be pretty decisive. I love that. You have to talk about making decisions in life when it comes to getting to that goal, getting to that mission, getting to that purpose, and all those things come to alignment. The last thing I'm going to talk about is continuously evolving as a key takeaway. Continue to learn, continue to get better, continue to challenge yourself, continue to put yourself with the right coaching group, with the right mentors, with the right network of people that's going to always challenge you, that's going to continue pushing you, that's going to continue to have you growing.
And that keeps us from being stagnant, like you mentioned earlier. Oh, I love it. Those are all amazing key takeaways. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If anybody listening today wanted to learn more about you or find you online, is there a way that they can do that today?
Most definitely. You can reach my email at mallison, ALLISON, at theadversityacademy.com. Or you could also just visit our website, www.theadversityacademy.com. Or you can reach my personal website at michaelwallison.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was a great conversation. I really do appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Tara, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Of course, thank you to our listeners. We hope you have gained some insights from today's episodes. I know I did. If you would like more information on our leadership coaching, consulting, or amplifying leadership community, where all are welcome, please visit us at amplifyingleadership.ca, a Twin Life coaching and business services division. Until next time, please be safe and be an amazing leader or leader to be.